Let's begin. Let me ask you a question. What does God do in response to his people's unfaithfulness? I'll say that again. What does God do in response to his people's unfaithfulness? That's a good question to ask, because we know what people do, don't we? So if a fella is cheated on by his missus, he shouts at her. He calls her for all kinds. He drags her name through the dirt. I don't know whether you saw that on eBay not too long ago. You could buy a Ferrari. The end price to buy the Ferrari was £1. And you say, how did you get such a bargain, whoever it was who got it? It was because a jilted woman was so angry at her fella doing the dirty on her that she put his prize Ferrari up and sold it for £1. Of course, if you watch the music videos these days, you'll see something slightly different, won't you? The trend it seems to be showing on the music video, I think the new one that's out is Enrique and Cassie, and they're having this big row in this music video, and they're smashing up the house. That's the way to deal with unfaithfulness. Smash it all up, and then get a big can of Duralux gloss and chuck it over the car. That's how we deal with unfaithfulness. And it seems to me that so often, more than anything, the way we deal with it, it's a way to deal with our anger, but in some way, it's like shouting against our powerlessness, isn't it? If somebody's unfaithful to us, it cripples us a bit, doesn't it? It makes us feel, I've had this done, I've got to do something to show I'm not powerless. So the question is, what does the Lord do in response to people being unfaithful to him? What does God actually do? And it's a good question for this reason, but it's a good question for everybody in this room, because you are in one of these two groups. You are either somebody who has trusted in the God of Israel through the Lord Jesus Christ and saying, I'm standing on him as my hope. Because what the Bible tells us is that as you do that, you enter into something of a marriage agreement with God. He promises to be your God, and you promise to be his people. And so if we are unfaithful, how will he respond? Because let's face it, we're not all that we wish we were, are we? But what about if you're somebody who's still trying to make up their mind? I'm not sure whether this Jesus business is really for me. I'm interested. Well, the Bible tells us again that you're in a different covenant agreement with God. By the fact that he made you, and he loved you, he has intended that you would respond and you would become his bride. That you would enter into a marriage relationship with him. And if up to this point you haven't, it's not because you're just forgetful. It's actually because you're unfaithful, says the Bible. So the question is, for whether you're somebody who has decided to trust in Jesus or somebody who's still trying to make up their minds, the answer is, the question is, what is God going to do about unfaithfulness? Is he powerless too, just like the lady who chucks paint over the nice car or sells the Ferrari? Well, Hosea is the place where we go to find out. What is he going to do in the face of unfaithfulness? Now, to help you, we're going to have some questions come up in a minute, not quite yet, because we're going to think about the film Indecent Proposal. Has anybody here seen the film Indecent Proposal? About three of you, right? Let me tell you the story. You've got Woody Harrelson and Demi Moore, and they're a lovely couple. They love each other, but they've got nothing to rub together. Nothing at all. Absolute pittance. But they're in love and they've got a happy marriage. And then they decide, in a moment of madness, to head off to Vegas to blow their last amount of money. I say they've got nothing. It was about $5,000. Some of you remember in the film now, it's the mid-90s. Yeah, maybe? No? Okay. They take their last $5,000 down to Vegas to blow it all, and just as they've blown all their last money, they've got nothing to rub together, along with Robert Redford. And he's wealthy, he's minted, he's handsome, but he's lonely. And so he makes an indecent proposal when he sees the love of this couple of Demi and Woody. He says, I will give you $1 million for one night with your wife. And the couple, after umming and ahhing, after a long time, they hate the idea, how ridiculous, but the pull of the money is so much so that they agree. And there's this powerful scene in the film where all of a sudden, Woody, just as he's handed his wife over for a night with Robert Redford, he realises that it's stupid and it's just not worth the price. And you see him belting up to the top of the building where the helicopter is, and he runs out onto the top of the building on the helipad just as the helicopter is pulling away, and looking out the window is Robert Redford with something of a smile on his face, and he's away. Woody falls to his knees. What have I done? It was an indecent proposal. What on earth? It's just glorified prostitution, isn't it? And of course, as the film goes on, you find that Woody and Demi, it wrecks them. What promised so much, just killed them off. Now that's the film Indecent Proposal. That is not what's going on in Hosea. I want to flip the story. I'm going to rewrite it for you. I want you to listen, so I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about it. Imagine, not that Demi is married to Woody. Imagine this, that Demi is actually married to Robert Redford. In the mansion, the silk pyjamas, the nails, the pedicure, the whole caboodle, and along walks Woody, who's got nothing to his name, and says, come to bed with me. I'll take care of you. I'll give you everything you could possibly want. And she falls for it. And she goes off, and she carries on with Woody. Come to bed with me, he says, I'll give you the world. So she falls for it, and then after she's done that, she goes back to the mansion with a smile on her face, and there's Robert Redford. He gives her her glass of champagne, he gives her the caviar, he puts the silk pyjamas on her, he covers her over with this incredibly expensive linen, and poor Demi just thinks to herself, Woody sure looks after me. And she's thinking that. Now Robert Redford clicks onto this, and he turns to her and says, are you sleeping around? And she comes clean and she says, yes, I'm sleeping with Woody. I'm after him. Why? Goes Robert, what on earth are you doing? I have to, she says. She provides everything for me. Without him, I've got nothing. No, he doesn't. I do. But she's in total denial. He gives me my food, my clothes, my safety, my mansion, my security, my love. So the question that I'm about to ask you now is to do with what would Robert Redford do? The more he seems to give her, the more she thinks that Woody is the one who's delivered. So you've got 3 questions to turn to the person who gives you an answer. They're going to come up now. Question number 1 is, why did she look outside the marriage? Question number 2 is, what should R.R., if you can guess who that is, what should R.R. do about it? And thirdly, what will change her? So you get the story, you get the scene? A minute and a half, go and have a think about it. Answer them 3 questions there. Go! I like that, people moving to be near somebody. Ow, it's okay to move. That's good. Movement in church is not a bad thing. Brilliant. Go, go, go. Right, if you're still on question 1, move on a bit, please. You're supposed to be a bit further up on question 2 or 3 by now. Right, I'm going to give you 15 seconds to come up with your answers. Okay, how do we get on there then? Let's have a think. Question number 1. Why did she look outside the marriage? Looking for something better, it's good. Have a go. That's interesting. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Thank you. Go on. Maybe she wasn't loved. Okay. What was given away when she was asked why on earth are you doing it? What did she say? Sorry? Because I need to, because Woody's the one who provides for me. And she's talking about, and she said, the mansions, the car, the security. So why did she look outside the marriage? And that makes her an idiot. That is why she looked outside the marriage, because she's a fool. Because she thought, she was just stupid. She didn't realise that the one who she was married to was the one who provided for her, and she goes selling herself to somebody who she thinks will provide for her. She's just an idiot. Good, that, isn't it? Good, next one, number 2. What should Robert Redford do about it? Is he powerless? That's interesting. No, say that last bit again. That if she... Yeah? Brilliant, okay. Good. Anything else you want after that? Off. Brilliant. So because of his... say that last bit again. Everybody listen, that's very good. Go on. Because her heart is still absolutely convinced that the one who's kept her in the life that she's become accustomed to is Woody. Yeah, so he's not powerless because he could just remove all those things to show where they've all been coming from. There's one route. Another route is lock her up or bump off Woody. Yeah, okay. Okay, last question then. What will change her? Well, that's related to what the first question is, if you know what the problem is. What will change her? Have a go. That's really helpful, yeah. Acceptance. By who? Yeah. Yeah, I think what I'd do is I'd push that. I'd say they need acceptance. Yeah, hold on, before I say what I think. Come on, a few more things. Were you waving your hand there? Thank you for that. Sorry? Good, so that's linked to what Claire said a minute ago for number 2. So which side do you really put it on? And what would change her? It's amazing, isn't it, how acceptance changes people. But linked to the first question, what's her biggest problem? That she's something needs to be done to break through how stupid she is. And that's not going to be education, is it? Because it's not a problem of intellect, it's a problem of... That's it. So something needs to be done to make her realise how loved and secure she is. How accepted she was. Brilliant. Okay? Now, strangely enough, those 3 points are pretty much the 3 points of what happens in Hosea chapter 2. Okay? That's where we go. So in many ways, you could almost get up and walk out now because you know what the... But actually, if you did that, you've missed too much good stuff because we're going to see it in action. This is real history. This is what has actually happened. So, let's very quickly, when I find where I am in my notes, we'll carry on, okay? So, point number 1, stick it up if you would. Why we betray God. We're in this, remember? Why we betray God. We go to what we think delivers, don't we? Have you noticed that? You will go wherever your heart leads, or you will want after whatever your heart believes will meet your needs. So, verse 2, the marriage apparently is on the rocks now. This is God speaking, and he says, rebuke your mother, rebuke her, for she is not my wife, and I am not her husband. To the mother nation, Hosea has got to say, listen, whatever was left of our relationship, God with his people, is over, and it was not me who broke this off, it was them. You can see why. She's got a sugar daddy. Can you see it in verse 5? Their mother has been unfaithful, and she conceived them in disgrace. She said, I will go after my lovers who give me my food and my water and my wool and my linen, my oil and my drink. She's a slave to what she wants and desires, and she thinks that these other lovers are where she's going to get it. So she, like a guided missile, is after them. She doesn't matter about unfaithfulness. She's not bothered. She just shoots after what her heart wants the most, or where she thinks she will get her heart's needs met. Now, this shouldn't surprise us, because you and me have been made by God to be dependent, to have our needs met by somebody other than us. Who is it supposed to be? Him. But we're amazed in how quickly we can go and try and find our identity and ourself in things beyond Him. But what did it look like for them? What it looked like for them was basically the spiritual stuff. Yeah, we'll let Yahweh, the God of Israel, He can deal with that. We'll, turn up on church on Sunday. We'll go through the motions. But the rest of the week, we will live as if God doesn't, as if He's got no power and control. So for their security, where did they go? Well, when it looked as if they were under a bit of a pinch from the surrounding nations, instead of praying to God, who had promised He would deliver them and keep them safe, they rushed off to Egypt. The new big kid on the block said, will you be our safety and our security? And of course it cost them a lot. They had to pay a fair amount of money to get that. Or else if it came to the farming and they wanted the food and the nice living, what they would do is say, oh yeah, well God is sort of for Sundays, but in the week it's all about farming. So I know, let's go and set up a little altar, a little stone thing or a little wood thing to worship that's one of them fertility land gods, the Baals, of which there were loads of them, they could be masses. And perhaps they stuck it in the corner of the field, bowed down to it, put money by it. In fact, after a long time, it got to the point where they were even doing child sacrifices to the Baals. That's how bad it's got. They're killing their kids to get what they want off a little stone statue. It's nuts. But that's what they've gone, and they've totally missed the whole point. Can you see it in verse 8 there? Look at verse 8. She has not acknowledged that I was the one who gave her the grain and the new wine and the oil, who lavished on her silver and gold. Wouldn't acknowledge it was me. No, in fact, what they do is my people take my silver and gold that I've given them, and they give it to the Baals. And they say, Baal, please save us. Now, I wonder whether you would do the same as that. Oh, look how sophisticated we all are in this room. But do we sometimes say, Jesus, well, He's good for my salvation. I'll sing His praises on a Sunday, and then the rest of the week I'll find my joy and my hope in other places. Other stuff. I mean, He can't take care of those needs as well. He can't do that, can He? Now, I think as we look back at these people in Hosea's day, we think, flipping it, they're idiots, aren't they? Absolutely balmy. They worship a lump of wood, they bow down, they sacrifice to it. How stupid! Yeah, I wonder what the people of Hosea's day would say to you and me if they looked at our lives this week. Imagine, they'd say to each other, imagine thinking that you can take control of your own life and your own destiny without some higher power helping you. They'd look at us and say, you're balmy. But we think we're so smart and trying to fix all our own problems, don't we? Imagine thinking, they'd say, that you don't need anything beyond yourself. Imagine thinking that by one squirt of Chanel number 5, you can make yourself like Nicole Kidman. Oh, and you giggle. And yet, the advertising industry pumps billions into making you believe that if you just have that, then you'll have the allure of Nicole Kidman. And guess what? You will buy into it. Maybe it's the cheap sort of knockoff Chanel 5, I don't know, but we buy into it. And I'm sorry, it's not just the ladies, it's the fellas. Imagine thinking, they would say of the fellas, that if you buy one pair of Adidas Predator boots, you'll be like Fernando Torres. And we all see all the kids rushing out, but just have the boots, then I'll be it. And it's stupid, we pay this vast amount of money for things that we think will deliver for us. We sacrifice to our idols. And we give them our hopes and our dreams and our fears. We put them in their hands saying, please deliver me. Please help me live with myself. Please give me hope. I often quote C.S. Lewis, the guy who wrote the Narnia Chronicles. I'm going to make a change today. I'm going to quote his wife. The real horror of idols, she said, is not that they give us nothing, but they take from us that which we have. Weren't the Baals doing that to Israel? The house devours the housewife. The office knocks the executive with ulcers. And canned entertainments leave us unable to entertain ourselves. That's what looking for things beyond God does. This is what one minister wrote. He said this: we can believe in God and at the same time add worship at any number of shrines. Lifestyle, marriage, family, prosperity, health, fitness, pleasure, prestige, or relationship. It is possible to need people so much that we seek to draw from them the assurance and security that only God can give us. Our concern for status, success, and trophies for our accomplishments can also expose competing gods. Now, there's nothing wrong with these things, he says. But if they become our passion, or the thing that helps us get up in the morning, then they rob us of total dependence upon God. So let me ask you, what idol is devouring you today? Or maybe it's not today, today's Sunday. If you can't spot what you give too much credit to, what you need to do is see what the big highlights in your life are. Take your diary, look, what do you give the lion's share of your emotional hope, expectation and energy to? Because you're expecting whatever that thing is to deliver something, aren't you? And when it doesn't, you'll be gutted. And perhaps the thing that you are looking for can only be found in God. Verse 8, you see it there. She has not acknowledged that I was the one who gave her the grain and the new wine and the oil, who lavished on her the silver and gold which they used for the Baals. Do you understand what God is saying here? He's saying that all good things that we seek after are from Him, to point us to Him. But we exchange that for trying to get those same things from empty places. And the sad thing is that we will happily be unfaithful to God when we think that something else will deliver. So we're a little bit like Demi running after Woody. So secondly then, what does God do about it? What does He do? And you've half got the answer, haven't you? Because when we looked at Demi and Woody, we saw what would Robert Redford do if he's the one married to Demi and she's cheating with little good-for-nothing Woody? Well, Robert Redford, he was finding that the more that he supplied, the more she thought that Woody was great. It was like feeding a habit. Have you noticed that? It's a bit like almost like something of a drug habit, that feeding. The more that you get, the more you think that thing is great. So what was the answer that we came up with? And I think it's the right one. Remove the things that they thought the Baal supplied in Israel. So what Robert Redford could do is just cut off and say, right, you're going to learn which side your bread is buttered on by me just removing what you get from me, and then you go and see whether it's Woody who gives it you or not. And so that's exactly what God is going to do here for the nation of Israel. He's going to remove the things that they say they're getting from the Baal. So can you see it there in verse 5 and 6? I've read verse 5 already. It says, she said, I will go after my lovers, who give them my food and my water, my wool and my linen and my oil and my drink. Therefore, says God, I will block her path with thorn bushes. I will call her in so that she cannot find her way. She will chase after her lovers, but not catch them. She will look for them, but not find them. Then she will say, I will go back to my husband as at first, for then I was better off than now. So do you see what he's going to do? He's going to cut it off. What will it actually look like for this nation? Well, they're going to be stripped, says verse 3, as they were in the beginning. Back in the wilderness. Do you remember the story of how God delivered them out of the land of Egypt? Do you remember the story of Prince of Egypt, Moses, all of that, through the Red Sea? They were nothing back then. And he says, I'm going to return you to that. Slaves, broken, messed up. But it's not pretty, because if you look down at verse 9 to 14, let me read what he's going to remove, and I want you to see whether you could live without these things. Therefore I will take away my grain when it ripens, my new wine when it is ready. I'll take back my wool and my linen, intended to cover her nakedness. So now I will expose her lewdness before the eyes of her lovers, and no one will take her out of my hands. In other words, nobody's going to want her. She's going to be such a state. I will stop all her celebrations. In other words, even her religious life will grind to a halt. I will ruin her vines and her fig trees. No more beer, no more wine, which she said were her pay from her lovers. I will make them a thicket, and wild animals will devour them. I want to say this very carefully. This is horrible. No part of life was untouched by God removing his blessing from them. It is absolutely horrible, because when he says, I will show her no mercy, what does mercy do? Mercy protects and guards and keeps. No mercy means that he will give them over to the way they've been living. And it is going to destroy the people. Real people historically starved. Real people were stripped naked, put in chains and dragged off into slavery. Real people were oppressed. Real loved ones were lost. They started to starve, they started to be killed, and 25 years on, in history, in the year 722 BC, about 25 years after this warning, it all came to pass. The enemy came over the hill, and they were crushed, never to be seen again, the northern tribes of Israel. In the New Testament, please get this is so important. In Romans chapter 9, verse 24, we, people who aren't from a Jewish background, are described as those who are not my people. We're described naturally as that, those who are like Israel just then. And right now, you and I know that God puts us through a withdrawal program. He removes some of his blessings. So everything now that we put our hope on, all those other idols, whether it is the Chanel, whether it is the boots, whether it is the house, whether it is the job, whether it is the image, whether it is the looks, whatever it is, those things, they grasp us and they break us. They leave us so that they ask more and more and they never quite hit the nail. And God is doing that on purpose so that you and I will know that those things are not where it's at. That he alone is the provider of one good thing. But a point will come, and I experienced it late last night, when enough is enough. 722 BC will come for everybody. Because late last night, I was with a family alongside a dead body. And there is nothing more sobering than that, is there? See, the Lord now is giving us that 25-year period, or maybe a few more, where we're sensing in life that life without him doesn't work. But a point will come where he cuts it off and he says, no more. And that's what Jesus, the most compassionate and loving person who has ever lived, describes as death and hell. He says, now. You need to spot this. Can you see it in verse 2 where it says, rebuke your mother? That word's plead. He's pleading with this nation. Verse 3, otherwise I will. He doesn't want us to do this to this nation. And as you've already heard, they didn't listen. I wonder about us, will we? He's saying to us, come back and enjoy my faithfulness. Don't be given over to this. Don't be destroyed. He wants you to return. I like Bob Dylan songs. Maybe you do too. But Bob Dylan said this, and he says this is our greatest damage and our greatest danger. He says, or he describes himself like this. He says, I'm an errand boy of my wandering desires. Say that again. I'm an errand boy of my wandering desires. Right now there are things within me that just want to wander off from God. I almost can't help it. I'm being broken. And each time I do, I'm left empty, trying everything, but getting nothing. Got good health, got good money, got friendship, but still empty. So God here has no pleasure, just as I'm guessing that Robert Redford would have no pleasure in cutting off blessings from Demi. God has no pressure in depriving us, yet in our unfaithfulness, he's more bothered about our long-term well-being, coming and trusting him, than our short-term happiness. So let me ask you, what things are going on in your life that he is trying to shake you loose from? What things are you rushing to and trusting that he is showing to you don't work? What are they saying about how you need to return to the Lord. You see, he's not powerless. He's the one who really does supply. I wonder as you hear that, I wonder whether you think to yourself, I've got to come back. Quickly, I must come back. So the issue then becomes, will he have me back? So as we close, we're going to look at point 3. Here we go. Well, close for another 5 minutes. Let's have a look together at point 3. Point 3. What changes us? Seeing God's love is the answer. So here we are. We're in verse 13, and we need to see the next step. In future, if you need to leave during the meeting, that's great. Go all the way around the building and knock on the door. So what is the next step? Verse 13, we see it at the end here. We're left with, I will punish her for the days she burned incense to the Baals. She decked herself with rings and jewellery and went after her lovers. But she forgot me, declares the Lord. So what's his next sentence going to be? If it were me, it would be a tirade. It would be a fist shaking, a screaming and a shouting. Perhaps if he was more refined, it would be, right, my solicitor will be in touch. Some sort of legal separation or a divorce. You see, it's not easy to forgive, and I want you to remember that it's not easy for God to forgive. You see, some people think that for God to forgive, it's dead easy. It's a little bit like me as a kid. Now I'm a little bit older, I'm able to talk sometimes with my dad about the things that I did, and we'll laugh about it. So the ways in which I was rude to him and disrespected him, we'll say, oh yeah, well you were just a kid, and dads forgive, that's what they do, isn't it? But I've never seen a situation where perhaps a husband and his ex-wife get together in a pub, and they sit there and she says, oh, do you remember the time when I slept with that fella and went down London Road and, I hired myself out? And he's like, yeah, I remember. Oh, well, no laugh. It doesn't happen like that, does it? It's not easy for God to forgive. In fact, when we think it is, it's because we don't realise how passionately committed he is to us as people. So what is he going to say? Legal separation, divorce. No, verse 14. I am going to allure her. I'm going to woo her. He's not going to berate her. He's not going to drag up the past. He's not going to parade her sins and her failures, which is what I would have done. He's going to sing a love song to her. I've got a stack of them here. I pulled off the top 100 love songs, okay? And at the top of the list, any idea the top of the top 100? It was from 1973, Marvin Gaye. No! Let's get on. Number one cheesy love song, top 10. Everything I do. No, I'm not going to try. It was that's the top 10 cheesy one. All these love songs. Well, let me tell you, the second half of Hosea 2, if you read it carefully, it is possibly the most tender and beautiful love song. It's exactly as he said. It's about him showing how he's going to accept back. He's going to speak tenderly. Can you see that there in verse 14? It literally means speak tenderly to her heart. Verse 17, look, I love this. I will remove the names of the Baals from her lips. He's going to say and do something that will mean that no longer does she want to run after Woody. She realises where she gets it from. She realises how good he is. She'll see that she's been foolish and selfish and she was blind. He's going to woo her back. Now this is outrageous. This is unheard of. Now I'm guessing that as some of you listen to this, you'll say, this is great for some people who sit in church, but not for me, because I'm too ugly. I'm too unfaithful. I've fallen too many times. I'm too defiled. I'm too grubby. I'm too soiled. And that's because you've got the wrong picture of what's going on here as God sings a love song to his people. You're probably thinking, here's beautiful God, and here's his beautiful bride. You've sort of got this picture in your mind of High School Musical 3, where you've got, what's his name? Hold on, Troy. You be quiet, Catherine, you're too excited about High School Musical. You've got Troy and beautiful Gabriella, and it's easy for them to make up because they're both so beautiful. No, here is this grubby, soiled, mucky. You find where they meet. I will, can you see it there in verse 16? Hold on, verse 15. There, I will give her back her vineyard, and I will make the valley of Achor a door of hope. Now that valley of Achor literally means the valley of trouble. So you see where God goes? He goes into a grubby, mangy, horrible place where she has left herself because of her unfaithfulness, and he goes there and he woos her. Was she ugly and horrible? Yes. Was she grubby and unfaithful? Yes. Are we the same when it comes to God? Yes. But that doesn't hold her back. Do you notice how it says it repeatedly 3 times? In that day, in that day, in that day. That generation of Israel walked out and were destroyed. But a future generation of Israel in that day saw how God would do this. For in that day talks of when Jesus himself came. When he came to an unfaithful people and put himself in the valley of trouble. Do you remember how he died on the cross? He put himself in the valley of trouble so that they could have hope. He paid the price. Can you see it there down in verse 19? Look at this. I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you in righteousness and justice, in compassion and love. Do you know what a betrothal is? It's sort of like a cranked up engagement. When you get engaged, you just agree to be married. But when you have a betrothal, it is that the groom pays a price to have the bride. And what is the price that Jesus had to pay? I will betroth you in righteousness and justice. In other words, he himself had to pay the price, deal justly with their rebellion and sin. And he paid in his own body on a cross. So that, as they are betrothed in righteousness and justice, they see his commitment, his love and compassion. Verse 19. And so, as you hear in verse 16, the only thing in this whole chapter that we're told that the wife will do, that the people will do, is found in verse 16. Everything else is what God will do. There's only one thing. Can you see it there? Excuse me. In that day, declares the Lord, you will call me my husband. You will no longer call me master. In other words, her heart will now say, not some dude who I get stuff off, but my husband. My husband. There are a couple of things I wanted to bring to you before I finish, but I'm not going to do that because we've run out of time. But to say this. If you sense that in any way you resemble the nation of Israel, even if you're regular here on a Sunday, even if you've been serving the Lord with all your heart and with all your passion, realise that the Lord's passion for you is as a husband who is desperately hurt when you run after other things. Yet he pays for it and says, come back to me. Renounce those things you give yourself to. If you're somebody here today who's not sure, can I tell you that you've got time, but how much time we don't know. They had time, and all they used it for was to get themselves into a worse hole before he came and destroyed them. If you're not here today, why put yourself through that? Come back to him. Say, Lord, I realise that my heart is prone to wander, and I realise that you're right to kick me into touch, but you don't. And through Jesus, you offer a way back so that you can be my husband, the centre of my life. All you need to do is ask. Say, Lord, please, have me back. And as you do that, and when you do that, come and tell me, so I can rejoice in the restoration and I can help you grow in that. We're going to sing a song now.